Now that we've built a solid foundation, let's make this project a lot more interesting. In this video, we're going to build an AI-powered news analyzer. You give it a link to a news article, and the AI will help us look at it more critically. For example, it's going to help us identify whether the article uses biased language, whether important context is missing, what assumptions the article might be making, and what alternative perspectives we should consider. To build this, I made a few changes to the code. The biggest change is this new utility function here called scraper.js. At a high level, the file handles the messy part of web page scraping for us. It checks whether the URL is valid, fetches the web page, follows redirects, parses the HTML using Cheerio, removes unnecessary things like scripts, styles, and other clutter, and then returns the useful content as a clean structured JSON object. And actually, I used AI to help me write this entire utility function. I think this is a really good example of where AI can be genuinely useful when coding. I'm not asking it to build the whole project for me from scratch, but instead, I'm giving it a very specific, well-scoped task. The prompt I gave to GPT 5.5 hide codex was create a utility function for web scraping project. The user will provide a URL, and the function should fetch the web page, parse its contents, and convert the page into a useful structured object for an AI model to summarize later. So in a way, I'm now working at a slightly higher level. I don't need to manually write every small detail myself, but I still need to understand what the function does, test that it works, and know how it fits into the overall application. And I think that's the important part. AI can help speed up the coding process, but it doesn't remove the need for you to understand your own code. If you'd like to look through the full implementation, I'll leave the GitHub repository link in the video description. The main file to look at is scraper.js. Let's look at the main index.mjs code, especially paying attention to the system prompt and the user prompt. Think of the system prompt as the AI's personality and rulebook. We're telling it you're a careful and balanced news analyst, but we're also giving it guardrails. We tell it not to invent facts, not to assume bias just because an opinion exists, and to write in clear, simple English. So we're, in a sense, shaping how the AI thinks. Then we have the user prompt. This is the actual task. We pass in our scraped article data, the URL, title, metadata, the clean text. And then we ask for a 7-point breakdown: the summary, the main argument, biased language, missing context, assumptions, alternative perspectives, and a final takeaway. I've also made one more important update to the code. Previously, the model could only analyze the article based on the scraped web page content we gave it. That's useful, but it also has limitation. If the article is missing important context, the model may not know what else to compare it against. So now I've added the web search functionality in the response API call by adding this line: tools type web search. This gives the model the ability to search the web when it needs extra content, and I also set tool choice to auto. This means that we're not forcing the model to search every time, but instead we're letting the model decide. If the scraped article already contains enough information, it may just analyze the article directly. However, when it decides that it needs more context, for example, to understand the background of the story, check related developments, or compare the article's framing with other sources, it can use web search automatically. So now our news analyzer is a lot more powerful. It's not just reading one article in isolation, but it can also look outward and gather extra content from the web when it believes that would help produce more balanced analysis. Okay, and one final thing before we run the code. For this example, I'm passing in a URL about a hypothetical Tesla and SpaceX merger. Okay, let me just open up a web browser, and I'm filming this in June of 2026. And as you probably know, this topic has been getting a lot of attention recently. So as you can see, it's a fairly short article from the Motley Fool arguing that a Tesla and SpaceX merger would probably not be a great idea. You can read the full article yourself, but for our purposes, we're going to use it as an input for our news analyzer. Now, back in the code, we use the fetch web page function that we imported from scraper.js to scrape the article content from the URL. After scraping and cleaning the page, we take only the first 50,000 characters using slice. And the reason we do this is to keep token usage under control. Some web pages can be extremely long, especially if they include navigation text, related articles, comments, or other extra content. So by trimming the content, we reduce costs and make sure the request stays within the model's context limits. Once the article content is trimmed, we pass it into the OpenAI API together with our system prompt, user prompt, and web search tool. And let's run the code by typing node index.mjs. In my case, it took around 1 minute to generate using GPT 5.5, and I've saved the output in a file called output.md. So if we look at the file, you can also find this in the GitHub repository. That's going to be in the video description. You can see that it goes far beyond a simple summary. It analyzes the article's main argument, identifies potential bias in the framing, highlights missing context, questions underlying assumptions, and presents alternative perspectives that can help us think about the topic more critically. And what I particularly like is that GPT 5.5 also used web search to gather additional context and corroborate key points, rather than relying solely on the original article. That doesn't automatically make its conclusions correct, but it does provide a broader foundation for analysis. So, with just a scraper, a clear system prompt, a structured user prompt, and web search enabled, we've built a simple tool that can turn almost any article into a more thoughtful reading experience. So, to recap, in this video, we scrapped a web page, cleaned the article content, trimmed it to control token usage, passed the structured data into the OpenAI API, used prompts to guide the model towards balanced critical analysis, and enabled web search to give the model additional context. In an era of information overload, tools like this can help us consume news more thoughtfully and evaluate claims more carefully. Of course, you should still verify important information yourself and treat AI as a helpful assistant rather than an unquestionable source of truth. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and I hope you have a great day ahead. Thank you.